So we've gone through all of our micro interventions. We've had an opportunity to define microaggressions and the many ways that they can show up, both consciously and unconsciously. We've spent some time being able to differentiate between a person's intention versus the impact of their thinking or actions when it is based in a microaggression. And then we've had an opportunity to look at a few cases of micro interventions that we can put into place when we see a microaggression happening. So now it's your opportunity to move this work forward. So now you're going to have an opportunity to apply and think about next steps. So we know that addressing biases takes courage, wisdom, and support. So I'm going to ask that you go to your one-pager. There's a template there to help you think through planning for a situation where you need to put a micro intervention into practice. So the steps for your work is that you are going to essentially plan for an attack. All right. So your first step is to identify the situation. So name the microaggression. What was the limiting mindset or the bias that required addressing in your school community? Please be as specific as possible about the nature of the bias or the microaggression, who exhibits it, and who enables it, right? We want to name all the people that we need to support for intervention. So then we're going to ask that you choose a tactic. So select the most fitting micro-intervention tactic to expand perspectives. So as you do that, consider address the intent versus impact. Potentially name a counter narrative that you can leverage to help you navigate the conversation. Be sure to start with empathy, both for the person who has experienced the microaggression as well as the perpetrator, and then think through some ways that you might need to reframe the rigid assumptions or the hidden biases that the perpetrator has presented. Then your next step is to craft your message. So you're going to draft out your script. So once you have your micro intervention, you'll script out 2 or 3 sentences to summarize the key message you would deliver to that person that you were addressing or persons that you were addressing. Again, keeping dignity and understanding intact. And then the last piece to your plan is to engage support. I want you to plan for support. So who can you lean on to support you in the conversation? Are there any colleagues or mentors that you can engage to sustain the change that needs to happen? Like as you are addressing these microaggressions and putting the micro interventions in place, who can be your ally in holding the culture? So you want to plan for that as well. So as you complete your individual plan, again, let's consider name the microaggression, identify the meta communication, what's the hidden message, and then what's the potential impact? Even if it's not the intention, what is the impact of that message on the receiving community or individual? And then you'll be able to choose the appropriate tactic, your message, and then a plan for support. So let's get to planning. So you'll have 5 minutes to work on your own, and then we'll come back together. Okay, so you've had 5 minutes to work on your plan. So as you start to wrap up your plan, the thing that I want you to reflect on is think about the intricacies and the importance of shifting mindsets and how this connects to our call for justice and equity through education. And what's our responsibility to nurture these spaces? Because this type of work calls for us to operate from our highest selves. So please spend some time practicing. Continue to work with colleagues who can help you identify these tactics that you can use. Practice these scripts so that you feel prepared to interrupt these harmful practices as they happen in your school community. So now we've come to the end of our session, and we call this section Nurturing the Flame. So I ask that you go back to your self-assessment and to your journal prompts and go through and answer those questions again. What have you learned? Do you feel like you have some new strategies for identifying a racial microaggression when it happens? Can you then differentiate between the intention of a person who leverages a microaggression versus the impact so you can name it? Are you now more effective at identifying the hidden messages that exist within a microaggression? And do you have the skills to strategically choose one of the 3 micro interventions and choose a tactic within it to then disrupt or neutralize a microaggression as it's happening? So, friends, we've reached the end of our session. So hopefully you've been able to gain some insights, some new skills and tactics, and you've had an opportunity to reflect on your practice. And that by going through the planning process, you're now able to essentially take your intention into action. So as we close, we want you to take this final moment for reflection. So I would love for you to take a minute to think about how you're going to put your new learning into practice. So in this moment, think about, what's your biggest insight? What new capability or mindset shift did you experience during the session that's valuable for you in addressing biases with understanding? And then let's take that intention into action. What constructive micro intervention did you identify that you feel prepared to put into action? And then what support might you still need? And then our final piece is to expand our perspectives. How are you going to sustain courageous conversations that redeem ignorance with wisdom? That you'll be able to effectively not escalate confrontation without resolution, and that you'll work with compassion and grace when you're confronted with a perpetrator who is putting out a microaggression, that you can stop, neutralize, and then essentially maybe provide some better insights. So you have your questions for reflection. Please take the time out to actually capture your thinking as we close out this webinar, and I wish you luck on your journey. So again, thank you so much. If you want to reach out to me, you can contact me by going to my website, theluminescentleader.org. I love to connect and hear about your journey. Until then, please take care.